Yeah, not good at public speaking, and but apparently I've got the face for radio, so
well, definitely
that's
got
good.
the face for radio. You're looking like
Thank you.
An old-time rocker here, with your denim jacket and the purple glasses. I wish we were on television so that people could see you. You look right out of a Supertramp.
Cool, man. Thank you. Hey, the purple glasses, yep, they're permanent fixtures to my face these days, which is a bit of a shame. And when I'm doing sewing and things like that, I actually need to put another pair in front of these ones just to see the needle. So,
well, you've destroyed the image of you saying that you do sewing. I mean, although that's a great departure from masculinity and riding motorbikes.
Oh, I love doing stuff. I'm an active relaxer, and if I'm not doing something, I'm not relaxing, and sewing is really kind of therapeutic for me. So yeah.
Well, those of us who are vulnerable to mental health issues need some creativity. But it's interesting you say that you're an active relaxer. I've never heard that before.
It's something that I've been aware of for many, many years. I can't I just can't be doing nothing. I've got to be doing something. Otherwise, my mind just takes over, and that's when I get into big trouble, is when I let my mind sort of take over. Now, I need to sort of suffix the sewing thing. I'm a shoe designer by trade and shoemaker by trade. So most of the sewing I do is leather work. The patch on the back of my jacket, for example, is an example of the type of sewing that I get into.
Yeah.
I haven't made any shoes for close to 10 years. I'd like to keep my hand in.
So did you move from shoemaking into mental health?
It was a slippery slope. Shoemaking nearly killed me a couple of times. As a shoe designer, there's a lot of pressure. It's a high-pressure industry, and I was often sole-charge design for manufacturing companies, and we were putting out 120 plus new styles every season, and those 120 were whittled down from 200 plus. So it was quite full on, and I used to really play to my mania in order to get me through that season. And then, unfortunately, the huge crashes after the season was released, and you kind of got to let your babies go, and you've got to let go of control. And, of course, you've had all the control for 3 months, and then you've got to let it go. And it was really, really difficult, and that nearly took me out several times.
So were you were at the fashion end of shoe design, and were you the only fashion designer for shoes in this case?
For the companies I worked for, yes, absolutely, yeah. I don't play well with others, apparently.
Well, you're a team leader with an enthusiastic team below you, and I would say that it's working as a team leader very well there, playing with others.
Thank you, yeah. And that's something that I've had to work on. Everything you see today is the result of a lot of hard, and I mean really hard work that I've put into myself, because I didn't like the person that was looking back at me in the mirror. I even to the point where I changed my handwriting. Nothing about myself I wasn't impressed.
So going back to
Yep.
you'd have a period of 3 months where you were designing all these things. Sounds as though you were a bit of a control freak and that you wanted
Absolutely.
to hang on to all these designs and see them come to fruition and success and that sort of thing. So you held yourself together until the fashion season or your responsibilities ended.
Yep.
What happened then?
Then it was big crash and burn. big crash and burn, and I often self-medicated with drugs and alcohol. Drugs, first of all, to help hit that mania, to keep me going and keep that creative flow going. But then, once you've letting go of that creative stuff, drugs just became, more of a curse than anything else. So, and then I'd spend, 2-3 weeks where I just couldn't get out of bed, couldn't ring anyone at work. Mental health back then was something that you didn't talk about, particularly in a factory environment.
Or any environment.
My goodness. And, so I spent a lot of my time isolating and really struggling with my demons. They were some pretty dark times.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've known you, Troy, for quite a long time, and I guess that's background that I wasn't aware of, and we've had the occasional intimate discussion over coffee over the years of sort of shooting the breeze about mental health. But so did you actually go from those sort of up and down times into mental health? I mean, did your own vulnerability take you into mental health?
It was funny. I think I got into mental health. Yes and no. It was purely by chance. My last major breakdown was I think it was in 2006, 2007. And I finally found a doctor who recognised what was going on. I interviewed several doctors.
You interviewed several doctors?
I interviewed several doctors.
To check out whether they were going to be able to do the job for you.
Absolutely. It's my money paying them. And I wasn't, I've met several doctors in the past who just weren't listening carefully. And so I developed an interview process for the doctors where I'd walk in, I booked my appointment, walk in, and, first thing I asked is, what's your experience with mental health issues, particularly bipolar, complicated or mixed with drug and alcohol addiction issues, and what course of treatment would you suggest? And that pretty quickly just sort of, they say, oh, we need to get you on this medication and we need to do this and you need to do that. And it's like, yeah, thanks for your time. I'll not be contacting you again.
So you didn't feel that they were going to be able to work with you to create a resolution?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, my drugs and alcohol and my mental health, they weren't two separate issues. They were issues that needed to be addressed simultaneously. You can't take one and you can't fix one and leave the other one simmering under the surface, because that's not how I work. I've spent a lot of time getting to know myself, getting to know what my body and mind needs in order to function. And a lot of doctors I met were, okay, we're going to concentrate on the mental health, and we need to put you on these medications. Well, actually my mental health wasn't about a chemical imbalance, so to speak. It was actually a whole range of issues that I'd carried with me throughout my life. I don't see medication as a fix for that,
It's an amazing coincidence, actually, in that what you're saying right here on here was reinforced or is reinforced by an interview that I broadcast last Tuesday with a UK psychiatrist, Dr. Pratima Singh, and she was saying that she needed more time with patients to understand where they were coming from, but the mental health system didn't didn't allow that to happen, and she sometimes felt a failure if she hadn't written a script, and sometimes the patient felt that they were let down because they didn't walk away with a
script.
With a script,
Yeah.
And I mean, you're just reinforcing what her attitude was.
Yeah, and I finally found a doctor who immediately turned his computer off, looked at me, and said, "I think I can help. I think together we can come up with a plan that's going to work for you, and we're going to get you back on track." He said that plan may include the short-term use of medication just to sort of reboot your system. But he said, listening to you, medication is not going to be the be-all and end-all. It's just going to be a temporary fix. I want also to put you in touch with a support group that was out in Pukekohe at the time. Put you in touch with a support group and there's some really neat people there. They know where you're coming from, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, what sort of support group was that? Was it peers or people with lived experience?
Absolutely, it was people with lived experience. So I was desperate. I was hanging on to life at this stage, trying to find any sort of foothold I could get. I brought my wife over from Indonesia and one job after another, just the factory doors just kept closing over here. And I remember, she's very good and I love her so much. And it's our anniversary tomorrow, so thank you, darling.
Congratulations.
Oh, my goodness. And and I remember, she put a lot of faith in me, and I seemed, regardless of what I tried, we just seemed to be going downhill. And there was even one point where, packed her, my son, who was only probably 8 months old at the time, into a tiny little hatchback with no back seat, and we just moved from Auckland in that, nowhere to live, just on the off chance that there'd be a job at the end of the road for us, for me anyway, and so she put a lot of faith in me. So I was clinging on and I was trying to keep it together and doing an appalling job of that. Doctor, he actually had a lot of experience from Holland, working with drugs and mental health issues. It seemed to be his specialty. I met up with the Franklin Bipolar Support Group. I was very honest with them. This is, I had tried NA here in New Zealand, and
Narcotics Anonymous.
Several branches of NA, even tried AA if they were to help. NA basically told me that my drug problem wasn't enough, and because I've got mental health issues, that they weren't interested in touching me. So I went to the bipolar support group. First thing I asked the group, or said to the group, is, I'm coming as somebody with mental health issues that long running. I also self-medicate with drugs and alcohol. Is that going to be a problem for you guys? Because if it is, that's cool. I'll walk away, no harm, no foul. And they all just looked at me and just said, welcome.
You were at a point, you'd got your wife and your young son in this van. You were just on the brink of sort of not surviving.
Yeah, pretty much. So we packed up. I actually ended up working again in footwear, but for a hand-making footwear, going back full circle to my roots of shoemaking, which was brilliant for me. Not good for the finances, which of course isn't so great for the relationships and especially when you're trying to bring up a wee boy. But I was determined that I was going to make the best handmade shoes I could make. Working for a guy, we got the contract to do The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, all the male cast footwear. The Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, the movie way back in the day, back in 2005, I think it was.
So did you see this opportunity advertised and you pitched for it?
No, I don't wait for people to advertise. I just bang on their door and say, hey, you need me. And I was, I'd previously worked for this guy, right at the beginning of my footwear career when I started at 13 years old. Pretty quickly worked out school wasn't for me, so I needed to work. So I started in his garage, then did my apprenticeship, then travelled the world. Footwear was really good to me, and despite the fact that it almost killed me a couple of times, it was really good to me. It took me all around the world. That's where I met my wife. Was as a result of working hard in the industry.
In Indonesia. Or?
In Indonesia, yeah. And
there wouldn't have been a lot of money in working there, would there?
Oh, it was the best money.
Oh, really?
Oh, it was the best. It was all cash.
Oh, is that right?
It was all American dollars
and
pretty much tax-free. And I was on some pretty good dollars over there. Come back here, fast forward a couple of years after September 11, we had to get out. We got married August 24, September 11 happened. Our contracts were pulled shortly after September 11. My wife and I had, about a month to get out of Indo after our contract was pulled. So we were back in New Zealand, October.
Jobless and...
homeless. Sleeping in a caravan, going from 38 degrees to -2 in the back of my dad's place. So
right, not the Papatau camping ground.
No. Oh shucks, no. So anyway, 2007 was a pretty rough year. Things didn't end very well at that role. Plans didn't quite work out again. And I spiraled, my drug use skyrocketed, my psychoses, which was largely drug-induced, plus also the combination of all the psychological factors, that spiraled out of control. I was pretty much the exact man that I didn't want to be. I wasn't a good father.
Or husband, I suppose.
It was pretty rough for the family, and that was playing on my mind really heavily. So when I met up with the Franklin Bipolar Support Group, I was rock bottom, and really, really struggling to.
So your life was in jeopardy, and really, I suppose that's why you have this interest in suicide prevention, and why you've developed this initiative called Y579. So we're back on script, almost 30 minutes into the interview. So
sorry, guys.
That's all right. But look, tell us a little bit about Y579. I mean, I understand that why you've called it Y579, but if you could tell our listeners.
Absolutely. So Y579, I guess you can think of the Y as a question mark, and I want to know why we lost 579 lives to suicide last year. I want to know, why that happened. Why do people feel, and I certainly understand, but I don't understand how we got there. the worst suicide rate since records began. It was appalling, and it really cut me quite deep. And we lost a few in the motorbike community to suicide, and that sent ripples of shock. And obviously, people were really concerned. Nobody seemed to know the answers. There were some warning signs that people seem to have missed or not been aware of, and certainly within my role, I've lost some colleagues in other organisations. Plus, there's a multitude of our peers out there in Counties Manukau who have successfully taken their own lives. So, and I'm always saddened by that. If I think back to my darkest days throughout my life, and if I was successful, I would never have known the joy of waking my son up gently every morning with a kiss on his cheek and saying, "Hey, dude, I'll see you in a couple of minutes for breakfast." I would never have known the joy of, 16 years married to the most beautiful woman in my world. And, our relationship now, it's hard work for both of us. But, it's good work, We're creating an environment for my son. And Y579 started, we heard about one of the losses in the motorbike community on Facebook, and it came at the end of a week at work, where we also heard of the loss of a colleague in another organisation, and also my son was talking about some friends at Rosehill College at the time that were going through some pretty rough times, and he was concerned. And so my son and I, he was 14 at the time, we sat down at the kitchen table and was like, well, what are we going to do? We got to do something, mate,
I mean, this is the reality living in New Zealand at the moment, that all of us are being touched by people taking their lives. And I had a guest at home who stays with me every Thursday night, and on Friday morning he said, "I've just had a call from my son in Dunedin, one of his best mates, who was partway through doing a surveying certificate or something, he seemed to be on the right path, has committed suicide." Yeah. And when we work in mental health, I think it's more of a prevalent thing because of the work that we do. So we've got this appalling statistic of 579 last year committing suicide. You're asking the question through this fundraising motorbike event to support Lifeline, why is this happening? Do you have any insights? I mean, if I pick up the Herald like I did this morning, and there's a survey in there about renting and what life is like for people that rent mouldy, damp, dark, unacceptable accommodation, and they're spending half of their benefit or half of their income, then it does seem to me that it's tough out there.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not easy. We've rented those mouldy, mushrooms growing under the bed and things like that, and it's hard to bring up your kids in those environments. We've had to make decisions on whether we buy groceries or pay the power bill. As long as we got a roof over our heads, that's the main thing. But everything else is has been a luxury in our lives from time to time. So it's really hard. It is, and it's.
And I mean, what impact does that have on one's mental health?
Oh, as a father, as a husband, I continuously felt like a failure, and that's not my wife's doing. That was all these mind games, all this social pressure, all this pressure from my family. You've got a family now. You've got to, you've got to do this. You've got to do that. And it was like. I'm just struggling to live.
How does that help you? That's just mounting the pressure, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Instead of the whānau and family coming in and being supportive and maybe talking you through the options or alternatives.
Yep. So, and hey, they've got their lives and I'm all good with that and don't get me wrong. But yes, the pressure for parents to be something that reality is not allowing them to be is.
Take it from us, we're talking to Troy Manley, the team leader at Whāriki Adult Mental Health Centre, which is run by Emerge Aotearoa, but he's talking as a passionate individual, and our script has sort of gone AWOL today, but we have dragged it back to talk about this event, a fundraising event which is supporting Lifeline Aotearoa. It's called Y579, and Troy has been explaining the significance of that title. So what's the plan for this motorbike event, Troy?
Okay, so originally we thought we'd just have a bit of a ride, and it would be sweet. We'd just get a few mates together and just do a ride, raise a little bit of money, and that'd be it.
I think the original plan was that you were going to ride 579 kilometres, was it?
It was, yeah. Then I realised that, the significance of September 10 being World Suicide Prevention Day, and September in New Zealand isn't always reliable, and 579 Ks, a return trip would take us down to...
Tikawiti or something like that.
No, further, Tūrangi, around the back ways and quite windy, and those roads in winter are really greasy and slippery, and I didn't want to put any other lives at risk. So anyway, so now what Y579 ride on our Facebook group has proved to be is a bit of a contact point for people in need, or whānau in need as well. So it's actually blown up and has actually turned into something that I had no idea it was going to turn into. And it's fantastic. It really, really is. We've had people reaching out through the group. Their whānau is in crisis. What do we do? I've had phone calls from people on the group saying, hey, look, I've got a family friend who, they can't contact the police. They're not, the crisis team don't seem to be responding. They're in imminent danger. What do we do? So, 12 o'clock at night, I'm talking a family through the steps that they might need to take to save a life. And
you feel qualified to do that?
Shit, no.
Right, because
I'm just a regular guy, and
we're a bit more than a regular guy. You've had great own personal experience, and you've come to the verge. But I mean, it is a very difficult.
Absolutely. Yep. And somebody's in crisis. You do your first aid training. If somebody passed out on the street, I would just freak. I really would. It would be like, where's my first aid book? But what we're talking about here are people who they're hurting, and they need to be heard. They need to be validated. Their experiences need to be honoured and recognised as being significantly difficult at that time for them. And for goodness sakes, don't leave them alone. and that's just the message that I've been getting through, trying to get through,
be with people.
If you think that somebody is in imminent risk of suicide, don't hesitate to call the police. Dial 111 immediately. They'll talk you through the process.
Do you need to talk to that person before you call the police, though? Because, again, this is one of the weaknesses of the mental health system, that we now rely on the police to front up to meet these crises.
They are in the best position to get people and keep people safe.
The police.
Yeah, I fully believe that. Obviously, you need to sort of assess the level of risk. If this person is telling you that they have made plans, that they are going to carry out these plans, don't mess around. Contact the police.
So that would be your first point of call, not the mental health crisis team.
In an absolute crisis, when they've made the plans, when they're telling you they're going to carry out the plans, absolutely.
The mental health crisis team.
If they're coming to me and somebody's saying, "Hey, look, I'm having a really, really rough time. I have been considering suicide as an option. I have been entertaining a lot of these thoughts, things." What I would be doing is talking them through assessing the level of risk from the scale of 1 to 10, for example, and be working with them to put together a safety plan, not a safety contract, a plan that they can use, that they will use because they made that plan to keep them safe. That's the most important thing. As a part of that plan is having the ability and the contact details that they can reach out to when you're not available. We can't be available 24/7.
So that could be a 0800 crisis line. Lifeline.
Lifeline, absolutely.
Who is the Lifeline is the organisation that you're supporting through this motorbike event, Y579, and I definitely recommend any listeners to check out the Facebook page. Got to wrap it up right now, Troy. We've run out of time. So, all I can say is Y579. Check out the Facebook page. It's all happening on September the 9th.
Yes.
Thank you to all, and thank you to Troy as well.